And I'm saying, with all what you've said, does that balance it off when you have the reality of your children's future being affected by the color of their skin?
And in some ways, it enslaves us also to be small-minded.
Like, one of the things that I said that we should be campaigning on is abolishing Black History Month.
When perhaps change needs to also be a change of mindset, because I think we're not even giving consideration to going back to Africa.
Organize, sit down, reason and talk.
Greetings and the warmest of welcomes to this week's ORT.
Welcome to this week's ORT, where we have our resident panelist, Emily Harmony, Brother S, and Kindred Spirit, and I'm your host, Kush. Kindred Spirit is not here at the moment, but we hope that she'll be joining us shortly. Today, our topic is, why isn't leaving the West gaining more traction than it is in regards addressing the oppression that has been revealed to the world since the murder of George Floyd at the hands of the police? But before we go into the topic, as usual, we have a quiz. And I know I'm with two of the sharpest minds when it comes to matters relating to people from the Black community.
Wow.
So, question one. Which rapper has recently had his Twitter account suspended for what have been termed anti-Semitic tweets?
Wiley.
Wiley took to social media to criticize or to express his experience of the influence of the Jewish community, that the Jewish community has on music and life in general. Question two. The Dutch pot originates from Amsterdam, and the inventors drew the name for the pot for the use of both cooking marijuana, which is known as pot. True or false?
False.
Wow.
That's a really good one there.
Brother S?
It's a false.
You say false? Okay. Well, you're both right. The answer is false.
Oh, thank goodness.
The Dutch pot first appeared in print as the Dutch oven in 1769, but had been made popular by Englishman Abraham Darby, who made his own version of the pot, painted in 1707, giving it the name the Dutch oven. But it was known even before that for bush cooking in the Netherlands, as well as the red pepper and spice at Granny's Takeaway and staple cooking as a cooking vessel. For the famous rice and peas Sundays.
Love it.
There has been a revival in 90s dancehall music. Name me two dances from the 90s era.
Oh, the bogle.
Oh yes, that's one.
And
Can you let people see? Oh, very good. Very good. Watch your back, man. Watch your back. Any more? Well, the other one that we had was the butterfly.
Okay.
Butterfly, really butterfly.
Yes.
Yes, that one.
Yes. So, which is the oldest country in the West Indies? Do any of you know?
Wow. Okay. Oh, what the country who was independent first?
No, the oldest country in terms of human habitation. Which one has been found?
Wow.
The oldest evidence of human habitation.
Interesting.
I'm gonna stop tapping on the phone.
We're not. We're thinking.
No. No, I would have never do that.
Yes.
I'm gonna go.
You might not.
Oh, is he cheating?
No, you see, what a setup.
Okay. Well, the answer is Trinidad. has.
I was going to say Trinidad.
You see, he was going to say.
Well, you never did. There's too much. If I was going to, if I could, I would have, should have. You never did.
I am Barbados, so I would have been.
All right. What is, and both of you will know this, I'm sure. What is the national dish of Barbados?
Oh, yeah. Flying fish.
South.
You got half a point. Half a point.
It's not flying fish, no?
Flying fish and cuckoo.
Oh.
Oh. Well, okay. Yeah.
I did give you a half. Come on.
All right. Okay.
I couldn't give you the full thing, man.
Okay.
So now we're turning to the question, which is, why isn't leaving the West more prominent and gaining more traction in trying to think about how we get some justice and are able to be masters of our destiny when thinking about a post-George Floyd world?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm not sure how steeped in tradition or fear, or both, that the idea of leaving the West fills people's minds with.
Yeah, which is why we need to talk about it, because part of this is a result of propaganda, showing certain places in this world to be so poor that your standard of living is going to be far worse than it would be if you remained in the West. And that's not a reality, but that's part of the propaganda machine. All these aid things that they have for Africa, it just present the place in a poor light.
Sure. And in some ways, it enslaves us also to be small-minded and not to be thinking about our position in the world as opposed to just in a country in the West.
Thank you. So it's a burning question, and we should see ourselves as having the capabilities, especially now, with the level of professionalism and wealth that we have in terms of home ownership and being able to invest in business. We should be able to see ourselves as being able to take a plunge and having the capabilities to manage some of them challenges. You know what I mean? I say, everybody watch Apprentice.
Yeah.
Everybody watch Apprentice and they say, oh yes, and have them dreams about being self-employed. So certain places in the world is offering you those opportunities because it now Mr. Lebanese.
Yeah.
It now Mr. Chinese. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Like one of the things that I said that we should be campaigning on is abolishing Black History Month and teaching a real history, because that will serve all of us, black and white, because white people have been tricked as well in terms of how they've been taught history. However, we have had uprising and marching and changes little over the centuries, going on from people who have been burning down plantations. It's been happening for hundreds of years. So the question is, now that we're in a better position, a more informed position, we have must be the highest number of Black people who have university education and so forth, but yet we still see our destiny as being tied to Europeans. Why don't we think about leaving as part of seizing our autonomy in a post-George Floyd world?
I think, I'm giving a little thought to your question, and I think change is actually perhaps the sticking point, because when I think in general, when we think about change, it's perhaps changing the laws and changing attitudes and changes in terms of equality and so forth. But that, I'm thinking, is the sticking point, because we're thinking about change outside of ourselves, when perhaps change could also be a change of mindset. Because I think we're not even giving consideration to, going back to Africa or going back to our Caribbean country. We're not looking at that as an option for change.
Why not? Why not? Though?
I'm not.
What do you think is going on there?
I'm not sure. I think perhaps the frame of mind perhaps is again caught in an abyss where we think perhaps the West offered more opportunities because it's a more financially viable country and their economics are perhaps a little bit more balanced than the Caribbean and so forth. And perhaps the thinking is not being stretched enough because many of us have our properties here, and that may be the be all and end all, or achievement, and that's what we wanted. And perhaps the thought isn't okay. Perhaps remortgaging that or selling that, or at least explore Africa and Caribbean and looking at them for necessity.
And I hear what you're saying. You're saying what I have observed, and which has given rise to this question. Why isn't it? We know what you can do to make it happen. Like I said, you go to Africa, you go certain Caribbean countries, and you will see Lebanese, you will see Chinese, you will see Syrian. They can see business opportunities. They're willing to take their children and raise their children there. So why isn't in all of this, aren't we saying, yes, let's fight for reparations, let's fight for recognition for the work that our ancestors has put in to build Western Europe, to civilize Western Europe, to help them out of the Dark Ages, fight a number of wars, to promote their religions, to promote their cultures. We've done all of that. We've taken their names. All of these things we've done. And yet we're still not at the point where we can say, listen, there's a high likelihood that these people can never change enough for us to be who we need to be.
I think we have to be
after all of that.
Yeah, I think we have to be perhaps open to the consideration that actually our home is in Africa. We're not looking at anywhere except for Europe or England in this case as being home. So it's perhaps a real stretch, or there may be an element of fear to consider elsewhere as it's a permanent home. I mean, we can go for a holiday anywhere in the world, but the consideration is we're coming back home. So I think that's got to be part of the mindset, giving consideration to our parents' home, our ancestors, where we originate from as home, and giving consideration to, giving our investments mentally, physically.
And you're saying the fear of that is greater than the fear of knowing that these people probably can't change in the way that we need them to change.
It would certainly be that.
With all the good.
This is ORT.
And you're saying the fear of that is greater than the fear of knowing that these people probably can't change in the way that we need them to change.
It would certainly be that.
With all the goodwill in the world. Because evidence has shown over 400 and odd years that
fear and lack of confidence.
That's something, man. Brother Hess.
We have been fed generations of misinformation and disinformation. And we have been combating that with having to re-educate ourselves, right? And in that time frame, we're also having to think about something like other options. And those options may include no longer being in the West and looking further afield. It is clear then that with that, there's going to be a huge element of fear about timing, about how old we are when we're considering, can we do it? Should we do it? And if we can or should, where will we go? What are we taking there? What assurances do we have that we will be well received and that we'll be given ample opportunity to be able to set up in those places like the Chinese and the Lebanese and the Syrians and the whoever else, right? All of those things will have to be considered even before we start thinking about not just the concept, because we can imagine it, but about the reality of us being able to even start that process, right?
Well,
now,
you know something, I agree with you, but let me pose a question to you as part of that. I agree with you. A mother has a teenage son and they live in the West, and they know that their son is featuring in the higher percentages when it comes to failing in school,
Yes.
when it comes to going into prison, developing mental health problems, to be killed by
Yes.
another young black person. And these are realities which there was a time you could say it's people who are basically so unruly that something's going to happen to them. But no, it's so widespread that this is a reality a lot of us have to deal with. This is why we have a thing called the talk, which is that at some point you're going to sit down with your children and talk to them about how they're going to deal with the police if the police come to them.
Yeah.
No, these are realities which are increasing, they're not decreasing. What you've said, does that balance it off when you have the reality of your children's future being affected by the color of their skin? You may have some misconceptions about what it means to move to the West Indies or move to Africa. And the reality of moving to the West Indies and Africa is greater, you're saying, than the real everyday worry of wondering if one of your children is going to get killed prematurely?
No, I'm not saying that. And I'm saying that the idea of going to the Caribbean or Africa should and is a very real concept.
Okay.
Right? And we should be promoting that. We should be encouraging us as black people to be thinking outside of just here. England, we don't owe England, we don't owe the UK nothing. And that's perhaps some of the mindset that might need to be challenged and changed, is that for those people who feel, oh, well, you know, the West, this is all I know. Maybe, you know, I'm heavily invested here and, you know, I'm a bit long in the tooth now. Do I want to start all over again? Maybe we need to challenge that perception.
Yeah, definitely.
And we need to become a bit more courageous and a bit more risk takers and have a look, right? Because given the scenario that you just gave me about the young boy who we're trying to protect from the police and having to have the talk, we wouldn't have to have that if we were in the Caribbean or if we were in
exist.
I think also, I think this needs to be a community-wide or certainly collective planned event or eventualities, because if we look at this as individuals, the successful transition to the Caribbean or the Africas is going to be really difficult, by the mere factor that if we look at the black demographic, we earn a lot less than others. And we're really not in a position to, you know, resign, or we don't have funds. Usually we don't have sort of like, you know, money saved to certain amounts that we can say, okay, this is what we're planning to do, or, you know, I know what's up and coming for my teenage son in the next year or so, I'm planning to leave. We're not in a position to do that. And I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. I just feel like it shouldn't sort of like plan to leave and what have you. But realistically, it's not something many of us will be able to do. Let me just finish. Be able to do in the short term. I think if we're looking at it as, and I think there's many of us who perhaps have given consideration to that but feel stuck by some of those elements, and perhaps others as well. But I think there would be that there's strength in numbers, and I think as a community, as a collective, if that is something that we could discuss and plan for, that means, you know, invest collectively. Look at the obstacles, look at the positive, look at everything, and plan for those. You know, our parents, when they came here, they did a partner.
But I want to challenge what you said. The first thing you say is that we don't have the money that others have, or something of that nature.
No, I've said it's difficult because we, in the main, earn a lot less here, and not many of us are likely to have.
All right. I get your point. Now, let me ask you something. You see, I don't believe the story about us not having X, Y, Z. You know. You know why? Crush era came here, and they never have nothing. And the white people that they were classed with, they surpassed them within a generation in terms of own ownership, in terms of having business, in terms of having children who can have degrees. So they would class you with white British, for argument's sake, and most white British people don't go to university. So what I'm saying is when they're telling us that we have less than them, I don't see that in my experience. I actually see us as having more than them.
Okay,
so this idea now, so what I'm saying is a very powerful idea, because when you look at yourself, and you're going to mention the innovations of the Windrush around Partner John, I'm saying that's an example of a group responding to a crisis by coming up with an idea in which they can promote their best interest. That same mindset is within us, but somebody is telling us that it's not.
No, but this is exactly what I'm saying.
No, but what I'm saying is, when you say, because you said it, and what I'm saying is, we repeat this message that we have less, whether it's less, we have less people who have money or whatever, but we've surpassed them.
Okay, so
from Norway, and what I'm saying is, going to Africa must, or wherever in a black country, must go on the basis that we have the capabilities to face whatever challenges, to improve our lives in the same way like we've done it here.
Yes. There are opportunities that are arising. I am, for one, receiving encouraging information from some of my peers as regards them investigating and exploring the career opportunities, the movement reparation opportunities, the citizenship opportunities, which are becoming available to us as black people as a result of enough black people collectively saying, we've got to find another way. This way in which we feel stuck to be here in the West and to dance to the beat of the drum set to us by the old slave masters. We're tired of that and we don't want to do that anymore. So we're going to pick up and we're going to do it ourselves. So there is movement out there, I'm happy to say.
It's about talking about it in a collective. I've not said that we have less than them. I'm being realistic in terms of we don't have a stockpile of money to say, okay, we're going to do it in the next year. It wouldn't be wise to do it without planning. Yeah, so this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying we don't have enough money or we have less than it can't be done. I'm also relating to how our parents did it. Our parents, like you said, didn't come here with an amount. They looked at the solution of making it happen.
Right, fair enough. I know that within our community, and when you look at data and statistics about our community, they talk about our disposable income, for argument's sake, compared to a white household. And I'm saying within that context, there are some lies that are being spoken about because we know we've come here with less, but somehow we've surpassed so many of the target groups. But I want to pose another question. Connection between the way our Black Lives Matter is their aims and us not speaking about other options, because I think there is something about Black Lives Matter want to get the best deal that they can get whilst living in the West. They have no intention to leave and go and build up any black man's country. Leaving the West isn't so much on the radar.
The reality is likely to be a reality for a number of people.
Yeah, but I'm saying with the movement itself, because they haven't come out and has said, something. What they're asking for is justice and fair treatment. What they're not saying is we need to leave as a people as well. So I'm just wondering if there's a connection between the lack of that within these mantras and us as a people not doing the collective thing, which you were talking about earlier on.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think because to give an affirmative to that would then suggest that Black Lives Matter is leading the thought process of the masses.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that's the truth. Because prior to Black Lives Matter featuring in many people's minds and sort of like day-to-day thoughts and what have you, there were a number of the black community who considered going back to Africa being their final destinations or go in to build. And we know individuals that have done that and who's lived there for many years and so forth and what have you. So it's not something that hasn't been in the minds of other people.
Yeah, but within this debate, because we're speaking now post George Floyd.
I'm not sure, because like I said, I would then be suggesting that Black Lives Matter organization is leading the thought process of the masses.
But they are, aren't they? They are forefronting this injustice issue, the corrupt policing, the racial profile. This is what they're highlighting, and they're saying it's attached to trying to address the things that are happening in relation to police treatment. And outside of that, they're facilitating the debate about what white supremacy is or how people are affected. I'm not saying that every aspect of it has been thought about and they're feeding people with it, but they're pushing a particular type of argument. And if you contrast that with Marcus Garvey, obviously Marcus Garvey wasn't speaking for everybody either. He was speaking for people who wanted a certain thing. But at least at some point, Marcus Garvey got to the point that he couldn't get the justice he wanted in America. So he started to tell people, listen, maybe we have to start to think about going to Africa. It wasn't his first position. So at least he was giving people that voice to do the collective thing which you were pointing at, which they're not. I don't see anybody on TV, I could be wrong, who speaks about Black Lives Matter and says, listen, we need to be going back to places where we come from.
No, I've not seen them do that either. I've not seen it as being a part of their agenda.
People not talk about it as much as they should be. Okay, well, we've had some, and we've...
Yes, unfortunately.
But I think it's been a very interesting talk about something that I hope people will talk about in their families.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely given hopefully it's kind of pro people to think in that direction, because it's a question that hasn't come about. And, you know, it's a very real question. Why are more of the masses considering that as an option? And if not, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth something to think about.
Definitely.
It would be good to see some comments.
Yes.
With regards to
definitely.
What people's thoughts are around that. So yeah.
Definitely. And just as a final point, there are many young people who are thinking that way, at least disillusioned or aware enough to know that the justice that they seek is probably never going to be materialized as long as they live here. So the question is, what do they do with their energy, their youthful energy, when they come to that realization? But there are enough who are very aware that Black Lives Matter could just end up as another blip.
Absolutely.
On the timeline.
And I hope their voices just become louder and louder, because they need to, particularly for the younger generation, who really are faced with so much brainwashing and zero positives about Africa, or even looking at that as home and moving in that direction, or their parents' country of birth or what have you. So I hope those young people who, you know, are out there, who are woke, who are, you know, putting their energies into that direction, I hope their voices just get louder and louder. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was this week's ORT, and thanks to our panelists, Ebony Harmony, Brother S, Kindred Spirit, who wasn't with us, and your host, Kush. Till the next time, walk good.
Included below are related links to this discussion. Please share, comment, and subscribe. And remember, talk the thing.